Hello, this is a supplement to Warsaw Debate, and here's our guest, Dr. Mirko Campochiari from Italy, in talk with Małgorzata Bonikowska. Welcome.
Mirko, I would like to start with your knowledge about the war. You follow Ukrainian war since the very beginning. What's your understanding as of now? Where are we? Where are the Ukrainians? Where are the Russians in this battle?
I think the biggest lesson this war have given to us is the fact that you can't base your defense on a pure professional army. When the two armies collided after 3 months, we figure out that the majority of their best men and equipment and officials were gone. So both sides...
On both sides? Were gone on both sides?
They returned back pretty much to a mobilization army. And that's why the war was dragged on for such a long time. Less officials, less capabilities to conduct
but maybe
this operation.
Maybe this was a mistake not to finish off this war at that moment. There were talks, negotiations in Turkey. There were attempts to finish off. Do you think this was a mistake not to stop there? And why we didn't stop there?
I think the biggest mistake was not to stop it after the two offensive conducted by the Ukrainians, successful conducted by Ukrainians. If you remember what the General Mark Milley have said at that time, now is the time for talking. Maybe he just calculated how long the Ukrainian can sustain this war in terms of human losses and how much the European and the America can help them, because also there is limits for a country like Ukraine in terms of training and ability to adopt such military equipment. So maybe he calculated that.
This was 2022, after these 3 months, right?
It was October, November 2022.
Okay, so now, after 3 years, or even more, because Ukrainians calculate the start of the war in 2014 with Crimea, what do you think are the chances from the military perspective?
If nothing is going to change in terms of support, special ammunition and mobilization, the unwillingness of the Ukrainian government to go with the 18 years old, which are usually in all the wars that have been done in this last century, the majority of the people that fight, because they are better capable. I think that the Russians keep advancing, even if it's slowly, because they had a hard time to recovering the losses of the first year, but they are slowly recovering because with their crypto mobilization, that 30,000 they keep recruiting, especially from the most deep and depressed regions of Russia, are allowing them over time to create pretty much strategical and sometimes operational reserve that they then use for their offensive, like we have seen in the last year around Avdiivka, Pokrovsk.
We are seeing also that they are advancing right now using this momentum that America stopped helping, also stopped intelligence. Do you believe that in any way Europe can physically replace capacities offered by Americans, or this is not really possible at that moment?
I think that's one of the structural problems that we have in Europe. We have based ourselves too much on the coordination of the Americans and their technology. The majority of the information were given to the Ukrainian were going through the Ramstein base. Yes, we have some AWACS capabilities to reckon around Ukraine, but not as much and as powerful as the Americans. We have some minor entities that make satellite coverage in Europe, but they are not as developed as Starlink. So as a group, maybe, but even as a group at the moment, they don't have the same capabilities that Starlink is providing. But even Starlink itself, without all the intelligence provided by the Recon aircrafts of the UK, which are also dependent on the Americans, is completely useless in the sense you can communicate, but you don't know, for example, where to direct your targets because you don't have any information in that sense.
But can you explain?
So yes, the Russians are exploiting this whole of information at the moment for the Ukrainians.
But can you explain to us why, for such a long time, Europeans forget the beginning, because during the Cold War maybe the situation was different. But since 1991, when Soviet Union collapsed, how come Europeans were still so dependent on American technology? Why we didn't build our own capacities like the Turkey did in the last 2 decades?
I think that's a bit linked to the political liberalism in Europe, in the sense Turkey have a lot of willingness to even go into other countries like Syria and have some delusion of grandeur, like I like to say, to make a larger Turkey. In Europe, we don't have this kind of things, so we don't have anymore the big pressure of the Soviet Union that allowed us to keep even excusing all these expenses. For example, Italy destroyed all of the commission that was of how many tanks and vehicles we wanted that were started in 1988 or 89. They were reduced by 20% of the original procurement commission. And also the tendency that we have in Europe to remove what is we consider obsolete. For example, the Germans had 3,000 tanks in early 2000. Now they have less than 400. The Russians have a different kind of modus operandi or forma mentis. They keep even all the Soviet stuff. And yes, we laugh a bit at them when they started using T-62 from the 60s. But as some of my general friends say, it's better to go on an old tank than go by the foot.
Well, and if you can now be an advisor to our commissioner in the EU of defense, meaning industries, Mr. Kubilius, taking into consideration Russia gave us a reason now to remilitarize, what would be your advice? How to reorganize the EU potential, the real production, the real industries in almost in every single member state there is something. Is it feasible? Is it possible to create a complex capacity of Europe to fight?
I think we need to address that more by the amount of money to structural intervention. I give you an example. South Korea always live under the menace of North Korea, right? And the war. So the majority of their industrial system is made for dual use, which means that in peacetime they make, phone, cell phone, and televisions, but they also produce chips and semiconductors for their own military equipment. That also is a sort of soft power that, in the sense, you send to your probable opponent the message that in case of war, your entire industry can switch to military capabilities at any time, at any moment. And that's a good deterrent, to be honest. You not only create jobs and welfare during peacetime, but it also works as a soft deterrent against the enemy that need to put that in their mind if you want to start a war. And we don't act in that sense. I like to say that Europe have become like Italy. Italy is the country of emergency. When there is an emergency, we start bring funds to that emergency, then we forget. 800 billion buying tanks and airplanes and things like that are not going to change our mentality. Mm-hmm. We need also to make a structural change, a structural approach to how we see the expense in defense, and also from a cultural point of view, in the sense that even Italy have problems to get more people into the army, exactly like UK. They have problem finding people for the second aircraft carrier. So we pretty much live in an illusion. We have think that we can delegate a small army of professionals to keep our countries safe, but as we have seen in Ukraine, that's not enough.
So in this case, maybe a Ukrainian offer makes sense. Ukrainians told us, Europeans, to keep us with them, that maybe we can have a deal that they still have 800,000 Ukrainian soldiers ready to fight once the peace or truce will be done in order to fight in case of need, but Europe has to provide money and weapons. Do you think that thinking, is it correct, or we should, despite the offer, build our own internal capabilities in Europe to have soldiers, weapons, and command?
Half correct, in the sense you don't want to put all your eggs on someone else, and then you are going to be dependent on Ukraine that have the biggest army in Europe. You know? Governments change and political lines as well.
But maybe we can control them by technology. Europe is rich. Europe has technology. Europe exports a lot of weapons elsewhere. Now we can reorganize and then give it to Ukrainians. We miss soldiers. We miss, as you rightly said, spirit to fight. So maybe Ukraine is a necessary element of this new security architecture of Europe.
I'm a cynic guy, so I see this as an element to gain time for Europe. In the sense, Ukraine can gain time for us in that sense, but we can't put our resources on one side. But they know what they are selling, and it is exactly the problem that we have with Russia. Russia is not a menace now. They still have a lot of problems in Ukraine and with their economy and their military production. They will be in 5-10 years when they keep this military production, and they will learn from what they did in Ukraine. That's the most important stuff. The million soldiers of Ukrainians and Russians that have fought in this war have a huge expertise, and that expertise have a price and a value. The majority of our army never engage in such kind of warfare. We have done asymmetrical wars. So that experience is what we need to learn from.
So how much time do you think Europe has, to invest, to reorganize, to produce, and to find soldiers?
It also much depends on what Trump is going to do. If Trump is going to lift the sanctions, or maybe even going to do deal with the rare earth with Russia, they're going to accelerate the capabilities of recovering of Russia. I don't think that Russia is going to invade any NATO countries. Even now we are debating about the coverage of Article 5 from USA. I think in the future we're going to see hybrid kind of warfare or liminal warfare, which is pretty much a zone where you know that there is some hostile actions, but you can't really identify who has done it, even if it's pretty obvious. So if I was Russia, I will going to try start doing something like that in a couple of years in the Baltics and see what will be the reactivity on the other side. If it's very small, very small and flabble, then you just raise the scale.
Thank you, Mirko. Mirko Campochiari, Parabellum.
Thank you very much. And if you want to watch the full episode of our debate, please follow us on the TVP World YouTube channel. Thank you very much.